Hey, thanks so much for stopping by. You did scare the crap out of me, so I had to go change my shorts. I want to talk about setting your drums up, and there's some pretty interesting concepts here that I'd like to share with you that make your drums a lot easier to play. Number one is the height of the throne. I mean, that's where you sit, and it's all about us. I mean, we are the drummers. And I had a drum teacher back in the day who was really good about teaching his students how to set their drums up, which goes a long way to make things easier. It makes it easier to play, makes it easier for you to keep time. You're not reaching across stuff to hit things. And his rule of thumb was always the throne should be about the same height as the top of the bass drum. Obviously, that's going to change with different bass drum diameters. Just a big bass drum, so it just happens to work out that way. But the rule I abide by is the thigh, the upper leg should be roughly horizontal with roughly a 90-degree angle at the knee with your lower leg going straight down to the pedals. It doesn't have to be exactly so, but the one thing I do recommend avoiding is sitting too low. Sitting too low, I don't know, some drummers think that looks pretty cool, but I don't recommend it. It really inhibits your playing. So, don't be afraid to sit high in control of your drums. Don't let your drums control you. Remember, you're the boss. Number two, snare drum. Snare drum is the center of the drum set. Oh, look, there's the bass drum over there. The bass drum's the center. No, bass drum is not the center. Snare drum is the center. So that means, well, you can see how biased toward the strong side drum sets really are. I'm right-handed. If you're left-handed, just reverse the image, reverse the concept. So the first thing I set up is a plop, bass drum, call it throne plop. We always did in school. And the snare drum is the center. You know, I mean, there are my legs, and that's the center of the drum set right there. So I typically set up with the bass drum pointing straight off the stage, and I am turned to the left. If you're left-handed, you'll turn to the right. So that will help you realize if you've got like a 6-piece or a 10-piece drum set, everything is offset to the strong side, and that's not good for your playing. You really want to involve the weak side as much as possible. And all drum sets, all configurations have got numerous compromises, and it's all about how you decide to compromise. And that is also going to depend on the sizes of your drums and the depths. The smaller the bass drum and the shallower the tom-tom, the easier it is to put things exactly where you want them. So power toms are a complication, big bass drums are a complication. Two things cannot occupy the same space at the same time, so you've got to make allowances for the size of your bass drum and the depth of your tom. And that's going to affect everything else. You'll notice that my snare drum has a backward tilt. That is, well, it's all because of the diameter of the bass drum and the depth of the tom-tom. So you start there, and then you start adjusting the snare drum up and down. I could raise it up more, but then I would want to tilt it back more so I can still do rim shots. Or I could lower it down and flatten it out. But that's going to increase that distance right there. You know, you'll see guys with big bass drums and deep toms, and that tom will be way up here. And it is a matter of physics. You're moving those sticks a greater distance, and that's going to make things difficult for you. You may want to go with a smaller bass drum. I recommend going with the shallowest toms and the smallest bass drum possible. That gives you the greatest flexibility. Then I set the floor tom up, leaning slightly back and slightly inward. And another thing the old teach always told us was that the snare drum should be close to the back of the bass drum. I've got a little gap there because this is a 13-inch snare drum, so I'm going to allow that. But roughly, and you'll see that most seasoned drummers have got the snare drum set up real close to the back of the bass drum. That's an important tip to remember. Cymbals are low and flat. I've always done that. They ring out a lot nicer. The risk of keyholing is reduced. And if they are low, then they don't need to be angled. So why not have them low and flat, just high enough so that you can catch the edges if you want, or you can play the shoulders, you can get to the bells. You can really access every sound that the cymbal is capable of giving you. The bass drum should be slightly off the floor. I could stick a finger under there. Shouldn't be on the floor, because then the spurs will not get traction. You might suffer from migrating bass drum syndrome. That's MBS. Throne height, snare height and angle, depth of the toms, diameter of the bass drum. Those are the big things to remember when you're shopping, and then when it's time to start setting up your new drum set.